All right, so we're now recording. Welcome everyone. We'll be starting in a few minutes. People are still gathering. Did anyone bring their musical instrument, ukulele, want to warm up the crowd?
I don't have anything prepared to play, but I do have the ukulele.
Well, there you go. There you go. Yeah, props. It's all about the props.
Yep, there you go.
Nice. It's Hawaii.
How long do I have to do this?
Your fingers get numb. As the top of the hour, we'll give a few more minutes for people to come into the room.
Yeah, I probably should have brought the guitar if I was going to do this for any longer than a couple of minutes.
Everybody grab their virtual pina colada or alcohol-free pina colada, depending on the time of day that you're attending this webinar.
That's right. They call it a tequila sunrise. You can't call it that if you don't start drinking at the sunrise, right?
Yeah. At 10 a.m. in Hawaii, Vernon says, exactly. Yeah, so all the attendees are muted, correct, Julia? All right, so we're getting up there in numbers. I think we'll just give it a minute or two more. We had over 385 people register, so we're about 153, so I'll give it a few more minutes.
Shout out to Todd Jensen, by the way, who makes and sells honey. And I got a jar of his, or a bottle of his honey yesterday afternoon. So I'm very excited to try that. I haven't tried it yet. It might be terrible, so we don't know yet. I'll have to report back in a future webinar.
You should do a live taste test.
That's right.
There you go. The hidden talents we have, huh? All right, I'll go ahead and get started. Typically start a few minutes just doing the housekeeping item. So I want to thank everyone for taking some time today to attend this webinar. As I mentioned, we hit a huge milestone. We've had the highest number of registered attendees for an event at over 385, I believe we're at. I am very excited to be able to share with you some examples of how some of your peers use the popular service catalog paper to influence their catalogs. So the presentation will consist of a few slides that I'll go through talking about the service catalog survey results that we survey we sent out earlier in the year. And then we'll move into the main part of the webinar where each of the 4 presenters will take turns sharing their catalog update journey and how they use the paper to inform their update. And then at the end, we'll have time, about 10 or 15 minutes for Q&A. So I encourage you, as questions come up, please put them in the Q&A. We have a very large crowd, so I might miss the question if you put it in the chat. But I would definitely encourage you to talk amongst each other through the chat. The side conversations are very valuable and important part of this whole experience. If you are having trouble using or connecting, please call in or dial in using the audio portion. Everyone is on mute. And again, use the chat window to talk to each other. Biggest question I get, I'll answer it right now and I'll answer at the end is, will this session be recording? Absolutely. It is being recorded right now. And I make it available on the IT Service Management website within 5 business days. So definitely look out for that. So today, we're very honored to have with us 4 distinguished ITSM and IT professionals. In presentation order, we have Chaz Grundy, University of Notre Dame, Karen Warren from Wesleyan University, and Paul Yeager from Penn State, and Mojan Amani, University of California, San Diego. So first thing I want to start out with is to share some of the results of the service catalog survey that was sent out. So we had 69 people respond to the survey. If you're one of those that took the survey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And out of those 69 people responded, close to 90% said that they have a service catalog. 10%, you can see, said they did not have a catalog. Now, we didn't ask whether it was a paper-based catalog or a website or a catalog within the tool. We just simply asked if you have a service catalog. One of the other questions we asked is, will you use the paper to inform your plans? Clearly, almost 71% said they were going to use the paper to inform their plan, and that's kind of why we're having this presentation today, where people on the panel have taken some of the guidance and applied it. And 28% close said that maybe they'll use it, and so maybe after today's webinar you'll be convinced to use it. So the other question is, are you planning to update your service catalog? So almost 91% said that they were planning to use planning to update their service catalog, which frankly, I'm not surprised. USC is actually in process of looking at our catalog as well. And then 8% said maybe it's on the radar. And then the last question here is, have you read it, right? We just simply wanted to know if you read it. So 72.5% said that they have read it. We've got 25% close to it saying that they plan on reading it, and a small percentage said they have no plans on reading it. If that's you, reach out to me and I'll try to convince you otherwise. Great. Okay. Yes. So Heather, I will share the link to the working group paper. All right. So the next slide. So the one thing that was important to us is to figure out what sections of the paper that you would find useful. So there's a section around the concept of service catalog, and over 30 people said that they found this section to be extremely useful. The idea of the concept of a service catalog. The next section is using this paper as an example of a service catalog model to start out with. And clearly over 40 people, a vast majority of people had said that they thought it was an extremely useful example of a service catalog. The other one here is, does it do a good job as useful illustrating components for a catalog? And here we had about 30 people say that it would be extremely useful from that point of view. Is the catalog paper focused on higher ed unique needs? And 30 plus people said yes, extremely useful. Thanks, Todd, for putting that in the chat. So for those of you who need a link to the paper, a couple of people posted in the chat. And then finally, did you think that this would be useful as a benchmark against other institutions? And this being our lowest number, only 20 plus people said it would be moderately useful. And the paper wasn't planned to be used as a benchmark peers. So I get why it's not a good example of a benchmark against peers. But if you're not aware, we have a resource that's available to you, and I'll put it in the chat. It's a list of universities that have volunteered their service catalog taxonomy. And if you'd like to participate on it, please go in there and add your taxonomy, and there's an area for screenshots. If you need to update yours or add a new one, you don't have permissions, just reach out to me and I'll set you up. All right, the last part before I move on to the main event is we asked in the paper, what additional guidance would you like to see? And I'm going to share with you a poll, and hopefully everyone can see it. These are the top 5 most popular topics survey respondents said that they would like more guidance on. So I'd like for you to take a moment and select which one you want to see us to follow up on with some more guidance. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. A couple people starting to vote. Thank you, appreciate it. We'll keep it open for a little while. In fact, you know what? It wouldn't do any harm for me just to kind of leave it open as we move through the rest of the event. So without any further delay, let's move on. So these are the learning objectives. You can see it up here. You saw it in the email. So I'll just kind of skip that. And first up, we have Chaz at University of Notre Dame.
Thanks, Mitch. Let's go next slide. I'm Chaz Grundy. I have been in IT for the last 8 years or so. Because I live in Zoom, basically, I decided to go ahead and dye my hair twice this fall. It washes out very quickly, but I do look preposterous at all times. So we'll just go with that. Also, I will note that I did major in Japanese, which somehow leads me to managing the IT service management team in higher ed. So clearly there's a path there. Next slide. We started off, this actually was one of the things that clicked for me and helped a lot. The idea that the service portfolio, which is everything we do, and then the service catalog is the relationship between those. So the service catalog is that subset of things. And we were thinking of it, using metaphors that we probably all have known and worn out enough that, I go in and I go to Target and they have a lot of things on the shelves and, in the aisles, but not every single thing is in that catalog that they mail to me. That's assuming that they mail us anything anymore. Next slide. So when we started approaching our catalog, we realized we need to organize all this stuff and try to fit them together. And, EDUCAUSE, the first paper had 55 services, I think, and then this next one, and we were at 60, and then we started breaking things apart and adjusting stuff, and then we added 61. So it really is a living thing for us. The number of service offerings, this is way out of date. I counted them up this morning. The stuff that's operational is 1,222 items. Oh my God, it's a lot of things, right? And so it's not useful to send somebody a list of 1,222 things. Even if they can search and sort and filter, really what we're doing is treating our catalog as a curated thing. So if we jump to the next slide, one of the first things we realized is that the way that EDUCAUSE had organized these, the working group, we needed to make adjustments and changes. We had stuff that we couldn't track back we are also tracking our time as a part of understanding where we're spending our resources, our costs for people and time and effort. So we're tracking time against services at that level. We have other things that we felt didn't represent adequately or weren't as intuitive as we wanted. So we started making some adjustments. And in each of these cases, we tried to map them back and keep documentation as to where they were falling so we could do benchmarking in the future, maybe. Next slide. The other thought was, so in here, I've got a couple of these key challenges. One of them was just identifying what our services were, and that spent a lot of time doing that. If we go to the next slide, though, we'll see that another challenge for us becomes how we talk about this stuff. The idea of the word service, then the service offerings, which correspond to these products in here at the EDUCAUSE paper, and we argued a lot about these terms. I know within EDUCAUSE, the conversations, and then as well as with internally, trying to change the way people talk and think about this stuff is a huge first step to this. And it becomes important, but it also has some diminishing returns. I will leave that to some of my co-panelists to describe. If we go to the next slide, I will also point out that we're really inconsistent, right? So EDUCAUSE has introduced some really great terms. We're a ServiceNow school. They don't use all that same language, which means that sometimes we have to do this little internal translation. Sometimes we can customize some forms and views so that it's easier for us to understand what we're talking about. And then, oh, by the way, ITIL has another set of terms, and sometimes they're the same terms, but they don't always use them the exact same way. So with all of that in mind, I feel like the terminology thing is a huge losing battle in terms of being consistent and really isn't necessarily value added to our users and our customers. We go to the next slide. I talked about the terminology. The next slide is really where we start to talk about the big challenge here, which is I have 1,222 things or 1,600 or 1,000 or whatever it is. And how I organize those things, that's really library science. And we have a lot of librarians on campus, and they are superheroes, if you ask me, because we struggle so much just trying to organize 1,000 things, and then they've got millions of books and millions of topics and different ideas, and it's constantly shifting. So we jump to the next one here. I'll point out that here's an example. Google Drive could fall into and does fall into many different places for us. And this is one of our challenges that right now our systems within ServiceNow only allows us to map Google Drive as a business application into one business service. So do I put it in email and collaboration services because Google Drive is being used for collaboration? Is it part of storage, provisioning, and management because we're using it as our individual storage system of record for people to store their files? We got rid of the individual old, tilde spaces and things like that. Or is it under software and applications, which is where we have things like Microsoft Word and you've got doc sheets and slides. Are those separate biz apps? Or are they part of Google Drive? Untangling all this stuff might seem kind of important to us in IT, but from our end users perspective, I'm finding that they may look at any of these things and it's not always consistent. And that becomes part of the challenge that our service catalog needs us to help solve. So if you go next here, organizing everything in here is gonna be tough. So service catalog goals, high-level goals. Number one, I want to connect our users to existing services. We found out that a lot of our students didn't realize that we had licensed Microsoft Office so that they could get that. So under our license, they can get Microsoft Office for free to install on their machine while they're a student. So you know how angry a student gets or their parents get when they find out that they went out and bought Microsoft Office at a retail price only to find out that we already had it available for free. And the same thing goes for faculty who go out and buy, you know, Adobe and didn't realize that we had a license to do this kind of thing. They want to get reimbursed. And yeah, I can understand. So this is one of our goals, right? Help them connect to the existing services that we've already solved the problem. The next goal, second, is that we want people to stop buying things we already own a solution for. So don't go out to Google and search video conferencing tools and then buy Blue Jeans, because we have Zoom licensed for all of campus. We've paid for it. We spent a lot of money. We rolled it out. We're supporting it. And for you to go out and find a new solution, it doesn't serve you or the university's best interests. So our third goal is to help promote the self-service aspect of this, right? So we're trying to change the culture so that people stop relying on. When we first rolled out Zoom, we had a lot of challenge with support, which was that people wanted an IT person to come down and start the Zoom meeting for them. And for like the first year, we were getting all these complaints from our IT staff saying, well, they want us to come down and start the meeting. So what do you have to do? Well, we walk into their office, we hit the join button, and then we walk out thinking, well, this is a great use of university resources. So we're really trying to shift that mentality and starting to work. We're rolling out our new chatbot. We have all of our knowledge base and things like that. And so anyway, so the idea of self-service, that's what the service catalog hopefully is a component of that. I can go out and find solutions before I need to have this. And then this comes to kind of toward the end of what I was going to share and present with you guys, because I do have a lot, we have a lot more great stuff. I want to see what everybody else is at, but we're in the early stages here. We haven't actually gone live with our new catalog. We're designing this now. These are mock-ups that are actually already out of date. I've spent 3 hours of meetings today on this. We're getting to a point where we're about to share it with our service owners, producing and gathering content, figuring out what should be in the catalog, how it should be organized. We're going to be doing user testing. That's another component of this. So if you advance through the next few here, the three challenges I'd say for the actual public catalog is one, producing the content. I think we're going to go live with about 70 some offerings. Each one of those needs descriptions. Each one of those needs attributes that aren't necessarily filled in. And hey, our service owners are busy with a bunch of other really important things that are crisis related right now. So doing it at this point means that we're taking a small team and trying to do that. But we're not going to maintain it forever for them. We need to get them to maintain it. And so that's part of the life cycle of the service management. For the portfolio management is doing service reviews and periodic checks and updating the content of all this stuff. But my team will own the catalog overall. And then the last component of that is getting people to just use it. So it doesn't matter if we built a catalog. If you build it, they're still going to go to Google and search for Blue Jeans and buy that, right? So how do we, what's the marketing plan? What's the user, the change management, all of that, to the organizational change management to get people aware of and using this catalog as well as all that self-service. So our last slide here next is our next steps. We're previewing it with our service owners. We're going to be giving this out to them in the next couple of weeks, gathering feedback. We're going to be doing some end user testing, usability testing to validate and make sure it works. So, hey, you're a student. You want to go get Microsoft Office. Can you do it? Can you find it? How does that work? What do we need to change, rename, those things? And then do a public launch before our spring semester starts. As students are coming back, this needs to be a tool that they can use. We had hoped to have this in place before the fall semester, but I don't know, there's some other things that people were working on in this time, and for some reason, this one got bumped. So So that's our service catalog plan. With that, I'm going to hand this off to Wesleyan and Karen.
Hey
Real
there,
quick,
everybody.
sorry, Karen, before I jump in, to help
Sure.
kind of move things along, I'm going to ask the panelists to jump into the Q&A, and as questions pop up, go ahead and just answer them. And then if we have other questions at the end, we'll go ahead and answer them as well. So it looks like a number of questions have come up specifically for Chaz. With that,
I'll jump on those.
Yeah, I'll stop talking and then give it over to Karen.
Thank you, Mitch. So there is no FTE in team. I am, yes, this is me, a little bit of a summary there. I didn't have colored hair, so I decided to include my puppy. I wanted to at least try to compete with Chaz's picture on some level. Excuse me, and I've been working with ServiceNow since we implemented it in 2014 and was part of the implementation and evaluation team on that. So the running theme here, if you can move this ahead for me, Wesleyan is, I'll give you a context since there's a lot of people on this today and that's very exciting. And I'm betting that some of you out there are smaller institutions. So I'm going to give you a rah-rah shout out if you are one. Wesleyan has 3,000 approximate undergrads, small graduate program of about 200 to 300 students and roughly 1,000 faculty and staff. We don't have nearly the size and scope of service catalogs as many of my esteemed colleagues here do. However, this was a journey that we decided to get on many years ago. And one of the difficult things about being smaller, we have many same challenges, actually, I will point out. Everything is just a matter of scale. However, we don't have any FTE that manage ServiceNow, and we do have a very committed, what was implementation partner, which is our service partner that I work with a lot on design changes and whatnot. But I have a core group of people that I call my CMDB team, and for today's conversation, that's really what I'm going to stick with, but they've also kind of expanded into being a little bit more of my ServiceNow people that I go to as well. So the approach that we took when we first started to get on board, we had certain goals for implementing the ITSM tool. But among those goals, we wanted to start to rethink about or think differently about how we offer services and how we identify those services. Up until actually even right now, our listing of services is just available on our website, nothing attractive and exciting about it. But we are days away from a live rollout of using the ServiceNow portal in conjunction with another some information on our other content management system. And the way that we were able to do this, and I'm talking quickly because I know we have limited time, is that I convened a team and I called them my CMDB team. They're a cross-functional team of folks. Again, context, we have about 50 people in the IT department at Wesleyan University. So I pulled folks from different units that all have a stake in this. And the only way this was ever going to work is if I could somehow get it a shared ownership model. We know how great that works. It doesn't work great, right? It's hard to do. What's in it for me? Why would I update this information? How much work am I going to have to do? I'm busy. But I had a core group of people who came together who really on some level we're dying for a formal organization of the services we provide along with dependency mapping, which was a big part of it for us. So they were kind of already evangelists and pulled them together. We talked about how we were going to do this, and that included defining our services. Next slide. So as part of this process, I did a little bit of looking into what other best practices around running a CMDB are. And the Gartner actually had a very helpful article, which I did, my citation is on here. And one of the things that article helped me do that I still look back to this day, we did this over 5 years ago now, which was they laid out a template for setting up a goals, related objectives, what you need in your CMDB environment and what attributes you would need to meet those goals and objectives. And we laid those out because a CMDB just gets away from you and gets out of control. And the reason this is going to tie to our service catalog, in case you're wondering, like, wait, is she just going to talk about this? Because we wanted our services, we put our services in our CMDB. And what we wanted to do is deliver our service catalog and basically publish elements of that without having to update our services any place else. So we have them all within the ServiceNow ecosystem. But in order to get there, we had to start with defining what our goals and objectives were. Why did Wesleyan ITS want a CMDB, the what's in it for me aspect of it? And as anybody who works on this knows, large or small, you start to just go down this rabbit hole of terminology and craziness, right? And especially as I love Chad's slide on the various terminology. Also, we are ServiceNow, but I think this goes across the board. You can just get so mired down in classifications, and in ServiceNow, they're constantly adding more. I mean, literally, you can just classify everything. You can classify the mouse pad on your desk if you want to. I mean, it just gets out of control. So you have to make some decisions. And part of that for us came down to when we feel we're getting off track, we cycle back to our goals and objectives. So these were our goals and objectives that we came up with some challenges and resistance. If we can go to the next slide. I started to talk about this. So what we were going to be doing, this was layering on some of the other staff. And this was these bullets actually refer to other IT staff, particularly our enterprise systems group, which deals with obviously the business operations and whatnot. They kind of looked at ServiceNow, and the services are like, what does this have to do with us? Yeah, I get that the financial system is a service, but I don't understand why I have to maintain this, help maintain this information. We're stretched too thin. But I had a champion on my team from that group too, even, who helped me to do that. And next. So basically, we helped them lay out, the longer version of this was at the EDUCAUSE annual conference, where it was about 10 minutes longer, but we talked a little bit more about some of the challenges and helping to explain to them and see, we're at this state, we're trying to get to this state, and it can benefit you with this. And for some of the folks in some of those groups, the benefit was if the other IT staff on the front line had a more accurate way of looking up what we do and who's responsible for it, would you appreciate less bouncing of tickets and irritation or things going to the wrong people? And that answer was yes. And also appreciation of dependencies. So we worked together. We used the ECAR paper to help define that. We would present back out to the leadership team of ITS, myself included, but I was kind of their sponsor, and we would present that out, get information, come back, and then present it out to the IT department about this is kind of how we're doing this. Next. So that has led us over the years to getting our CMDB into a workable, reliable, I'm going to say reliable enough, because as we know, it's a constantly changing, breathing entity. Services come and go, things come and go. But the data is reliable enough such that we could start now building on our other processes. So within the ServiceNow, this slide just kind of tries to represent a lot of things at once, actually. But we use the primarily services and application classes, a few other additional ones. We bring anything we could automate, we did. So certainly discovery, that includes all of kind of our hardware and virtual environment. I'm just including hardware in the virtual environment. It also includes a lot of the applications that we develop for our homegrown developed Wesleyan portal, which is how people interact with other services. Again, one of the champions who also has learned some ServiceNow development has actually created an automated process such that the system that they're entering things is feeding things into ServiceNow as web applications, and we create dependencies in there. Next. So this is a preview for you of what this is going to look like. This particular view is unauthenticated view. It is not live yet, but it will be. But these services on the left, you'll see our top level services, and then you'll see the next level down. I laugh for anybody out there who's been around the circle on this service offering, not service offering thing. We opted to stop using the service offering class in ServiceNow and actually just use the service, business service class. And in doing so, you can create the parent service and the secondary service, and that's how we managed to create that relationship in there. All of this information, and I picked this particular group of services because this is all stuff that everybody could go to our website for before. And now all of that information that was out in different places on our website has been pulled in to information here. I didn't do a bunch of screenshots because I have to move on to the next person, but you would click down, get more detailed, specific information. For some things, you could actually click right on an item in there to request. Some of that is not built out yet, so it might say to email somebody or whatever it might say to do. The different views are that if you're authenticated, then you actually will see, on the first main homepage, you'll actually see any incidents that you have open or requests that you have open. And if you're an IT person, and this is something that I've been trying to drive from day one, when you click down into these services, first of all, you'll see all service groups, not just the ones that we're publishing out to our end users. You'll also see the functional and technical owner of those services. That is for IT, people that are in IT only. And that is to help reduce this problem of not knowing necessarily who to go to for a certain thing. So we're looking to this to be as useful in many ways to our own staff as it is useful to our end users. So this is coming out soon. I know I spoke fast. I hope I stayed in my time. And I will be turning it over to Penn State. Paul.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm Paul Yeager. I'm the service catalog owner, the service portal product manager. The service portal is what's for end users, and the communications person for the service management office for Penn State here at University Park. I started at Penn State as a technical communication specialist after a long career as a meteorologist and doing some writing web work as well. So I try to come at things more from the user perspective. Than I'm not one of these heavy technical IT people. It's more from the user perspective. And I think that's helped me. Next slide, please. My contact there is there, pwy1@psu.edu. If you have any questions after this, just send me an email. Now, we recently completed an entire catalog update. It says last month. It was a little more than a month ago now, late in September. And, I know we want to focus on how the paper kind of helped with that process, but need to give you a little bit of background about what that process was first. That was a months-long process that required support from the entire service management office. We have a group of about, I guess it's about a dozen people in our group that works with ServiceNow, and the process is related to ServiceNow. We also had great support from leadership. And for something like this, where you're changing the catalog that affects thousands of people across a large university, you really do need that leadership support, because that helps prioritize things for other people. You get less resistance from other people. It just makes things a lot easier. And we certainly had that from the top. This involved extensive OCM with everyone from senior leaders all the way down to the service managers. We also needed to have detailed communications with everyone from senior leaders all the way down to general users about the specific changes that we were going to make. We needed to coordinate everything with the service managers. And again, that's a lot of people. I think Chaz mentioned that they have 1,222. I think they have a slightly beat in terms of service offerings. We have, I think, roughly 1,150, but that's a lot of people to try to coordinate things with. And the changes really resulted in very significant changes behind the scenes to the tool, to ServiceNow. I mean, ideally, you hear about what we changed and why we changed it. It makes sense very logically. But to actually make those changes behind the scenes when you were already using the catalog that was set up in a different way, I've heard it compared to replacing the engine of an airplane while keeping the plane in the air. That's really what we were trying to do in terms of this type of a change. So that involved a lot of testing as well. We had a lot of help from a lot of people to make sure things were okay before we went live. And we also still have some follow-up communications. We've done some already, and we need to do more. Some of the things that have been changed as a result of this catalog update are things that people might use once every 3 months, once every 6 months. We want to keep them up to date that this has changed so that they don't think something broke when they get to it a little bit later on. Next slide, please. And this is really basically the catalog before and after version. Before, we had 850 services, 1,150 service offerings, and this is for inside the tool. Now, an end user, we never required them at the self-help portal to identify what service they're looking for. They could just say who they are, what the problem is. It would go to a support staff, and the support staff would categorize it into the proper service. But anyone using ServiceNow, anyone in IT, really needed to know what they were looking for before they got started, because they needed to pick from that list of 850 services, even just to get to the offerings. And those 850 services were largely redundant with the 1150 offerings. We had, most of them were a 1-to-1 ratio. We would have one service and one offering of support. So because of that, that mixed service type, there was confusion because a lot of the technical stuff was mixed in with the non-technical stuff right there at the service level where people were looking for help. And there's no logical way to group services when you have this because of the repetition between the two. And we sort of had the first ECAR model was represented behind the scenes. We had an ECAR category and an ECAR subcategory, but that was largely not visible to end users. So it was behind the scenes and really wasn't helping to make the process of identifying what service and support you wanted any easier. So in the new world, we went strictly with ECAR. No, stay on that slide, please. On the bottom slide is what we went to. We had the 8 to 10 ECAR service categories. We had 45 services, and then we had the offerings tucked into that new environment. First of all, it's higher ed. I mean, it makes sense to use what has already been determined to be effective for IT and higher ed. And these logical service groupings made it easier to do reporting. You could report on a single service offering. You could report on a service, which is really a collection of offerings, where you could report on the category. The reporting was much easier than it was in the previous world. And all of that technical information was removed from the service level where people were jumping in. I mean, if someone was jumping in and looking for server and storage management, they were still going to find offerings that were very technical, but that's what they wanted. But if you were just looking for email and collaboration services, you didn't have to sort through that technical stuff to get started. So that was one of the things that came about with the change. So next slide, please. So again, we want to focus on how the ECAR paper, how the catalog, the latest update, helped with this process. And one of the big advantages, as I see it, is that the heavy work was already done. I mean, we used it nearly verbatim because it was done by higher ed people for higher ed people in IT, and it just makes sense to use it the way it is. And we had already used, like I said, kind of behind the scenes, the previous version of the ECAR model was already being used. So it wasn't a big stray to kind of, to start using it more in a more logical, more public way. And I also think that using the ECAR catalog helps to set the stage for logical, organized discussions with leadership and even service managers. We don't have to have the discussion of what is your service. It's more of what you do and what service existing service will it fit into, as opposed to having that discussion from scratch, which is always a difficult discussion to have. Now, where did we stray from ECAR? We really did not stray a whole lot from ECAR. I mean, we didn't see any reason to. We don't have all of the offerings. We don't have offerings in all of the services that ECAR has. I think there are 61 services. I think we have close to 45, but that's not because we didn't like the services that were there. We just simply don't have offerings to fit into them. For instance, if we bring athletics IT into the system at some point, we will begin to use the athletics category in their service, their services, but we're not there yet. As far as what we left over from previously, we left one previous service, application development, in from the previous, even though there's probably a service and a service offering where those offerings would make sense, but we had a request specifically to leave that in place, so we left it. And we edited the website services to be a little bit more expansive because we have multimedia and marketing people in the tool as well. So we don't have a website services, we have website services, multimedia, and marketing. But you can see really we used ECAR pretty much exactly as it was laid out in that latest paper. Next slide, please. And this is what I think are the benefits of doing that. I mean, the fewer services is because we use the ECAR model. We were able to fold those 1,150 service offerings into those 45 services. So we went from 850 services to 45. And that is going to be a much easier thing for reporting. Like I said, the reporting is better, but it's also going to be much easier when we get to the point of being able to publish that catalog in our end user portal. That's a future future advantage they have listed a little bit farther down. I mean, obviously, to list 850 services on any kind of a web presence is going to be extremely difficult, but to be able to do 45, it's going to be a lot easier. We think it's an advantage to be aligned with peer institutions. I mean, if we're doing the same thing that Chaz is doing in Notre Dame, there is an opportunity for leadership to do comparisons if they want to see how things match up. We also think it's a big advantage to have that less technical information at the service level. We were able to do that simply by using the ECAR model, because again, if you're looking for email and collaboration services, you're not going to get the technical stuff. It's still there. Go into server and storage management, go into the data center services, go into database management. You will still see the technical information, but it won't be mixed in at that first level. We also think it will be easier to bring additional groups into the tool because the services are set up. You need to tell us what we're doing. We'll fit it into a service and a service category, and we'll go from there. We don't have to have those big discussions about services. And also an advantage, we will be able to define service owners, and that's something that we're going to take in the next steps, and that's a benefit of using the ECAR model. When we had 850 services and 850 service offerings, you really don't have service owners for all 850 things. You're going to have a manager to manage that particular thing, but the owner should be at a higher level. And with the update to the catalog of having 45 services, that'll be more a director level position to have that service owner, and it will be easier to define those roles and expectations associated with it. We had a couple of other benefits of the catalog improvement. These weren't as directly related to the catalog, but we improved the IT alerts because the IT alerts used to be, the alerts were associated with the service, the 850 things, so that things like telephony where we had like, one service, but we had 30 offerings for each of our campuses underneath of it. If Harrisburg telephony were to go down, we couldn't send out an alert that's specific. We would have to send out an alert that said telephony was down, and everyone would have to figure out whether it was them or a campus. So shifting the alerts to the offering allows us to be more specific, and we did that as a part of this catalog update as well. And we have a couple of other kind of high-level projects that we think are related to the catalog that we're working on. We have service standards, which is we're going to define the expectations of what a service should be to be brought into service now, and have everyone run through that and run through those standards to make sure that they're meeting them before it's moved into the tool, or we'll go back and make sure that those standards are being applied to existing services in the tool, that are already there. So that's something that having the catalog is going to help make that a little bit more a smoother process. And another thing that we're doing, and a lot of this probably has to do with the reporting, is that we're trying to associate cost with services, especially service offerings. We're going to try to get down to the service offering level. And a lot of that is tied in with the discussions related to the catalog, because you have leadership looking at it, you have people who are making the financial decisions looking at it, and that's going to help kind of dictate what services we have represented and how they're aligned in the catalog as well. So I think that's all I had. I ran through it pretty quickly too, because I wanted to make sure we had enough time for everyone. But if you have questions, pwy1@psu.edu, I'd be happy to talk to you.
Thanks, Paul. Next slide, please. My name is Mojan Amini. I'm from UC San Diego. I try to compete also with Chaz's picture. This is my Halloween picture from last week. And that's my bio. You can refer to it afterwards. I manage a service management program, but I do not manage the service desk or the service enterprise service support platform. So we work very closely together in our organization. Next slide, please. We, like our panel members, picked up the ECAR paper. We picked it up about 3 years ago and tried to verbatim implement what was in there. We started to stray a little bit, but not from the main bones of it. We strayed with some of the verbiage and some of the groupings just to make it fit with our terminology on our campus. So I would say that we stuck to the guidance as far as the structure and the bones of it. We, somewhere along the line, we blinked and our IT service catalog became a support portal for the entire, for more of the campus units as well, and not just for IT. So we have support.ucsd.edu that takes you to the jumping off point. The IT service catalog is there that you can go into. We have 12 service groups that we created just for usability's sake. Those are called categories in the ECAR paper. We have 85 services today. I think those need to be whittled down. They keep growing and we keep reining it back. We only have 263 offerings, and we feel like those are a lot to begin with, and we just want to have a handle on them before we propagate more. Those are the campus-facing offerings that are in the portal, and we have 71 internal ITS offerings that don't show up on the campus portal. And from the paper, I want to concentrate on a couple of terms that we used religiously in our university, and those are the service, the offering, service owner, and offering manager. And those are the ones we kept repeating over and over again with our colleagues in our IT department. A service has offerings, and a service owner manages the services, offering manager manages the offerings. And if somebody says, well, I'm a process owner, we say, no, you're a service owner, that's okay. Everything's a service. And if they said something about a product, we say, oh, that's an offering. So that was kind of a rinse and repeat. Next slide. And today, that's what I want to focus on is the service owner and the service offering manager. And, but I just want to acknowledge that we also have a role called the business relationship manager, and that's really far removed from the actual, our ServiceNow platform and the day-to-day. That's at the 10,000-foot view, and that's really our CIO and the senior management team who reports to our CIO. We call them the SMT. There's eight individuals there, and they are participating in our executive governance committees on campus. They have relationships with our campus execs, and they're really responsible for large swaths of the IT organization. So just keep that in mind when you see the term SMT, that's what that means. But the service owner and the service offering managers are the extra special people in our organization. They really do the heavy lifting, providing services. So our service offering is like at the 1,000-foot perspective. They are more strategic focused. They're typically a manager or director in our IT organization. They have good relationships with our business stakeholders, and they're accountable. They're the accountable person for the end-to-end experience, including continuous service improvement. We have 37 service owners. So if you do the math, you'll see that each service owner could have multiple services that they are responsible for. Then at the 10-foot level, or actually boots on the ground, we have the offering managers. They are responsible for the day-to-day operations. They're typically the technology experts. They typically coordinate with the vendor, and they're the liaisons, and they live in ServiceNow. They manage the incidents and requests, SLAs, make sure the customers are tended to. And so that's kind of the distinction there. And we have 74 offering managers in our organization. Next slide. And service ownership is so important that we created this thing we call the service owner checklist. They need to work and live by this checklist. In fact, it's woven into their annual appraisal cycle, and these are goals that need to be met. There's 5 categories in our checklist. One is the service roadmap, and that's done in conjunction with the stakeholders, and there's architectural reviews happening. And so that's the roadmap. Another area is what we call service optimization. So we want that to be approached in a proactive way. So we have continuous service improvement plans in place. We conduct proactive problem reviews. So not waiting for an incident to happen to kind of do a deep dive. And then another area is communication, all aspects, all facets of communication, external, internal, within the organization, and also considering voice of customer. Another area is the learning plan for that service area. So making sure the skills and competencies are there or developed, and having a learning plan for that service area. And then last but not least, resource management. So tracking all of the effort, operational effort and project effort for those team members, and with a goal of decreasing our operational effort by some percentage depending on the service. Next slide. The offering manager, as I mentioned, is the day-to-day boots on the ground, and how we wove this into the structure that we got from the ECAR paper and implemented in ServiceNow is that we mandate that the key ITSM operations are linked to an offering. So an incident is always linked to an offering, a request is linked to an offering, change request, change management, problem management, they're all linked to the offering because that's really where the action happens. And therefore we can go into ServiceNow and pull up some dashboards. And if I'm the offering manager for the Canvas LMS, for example, I can go in there and see there are 110 open cases, and a case could be an incident, a request, or a task or something, and click through down to that to see what's going on or see how many change requests I have open, etc. Next slide. That also categorizing them that way allows us to step back and look at it and do reports from the offering level and the service level, etc. And so here we ran a report at the service level for problems that are out there, problem reviews that are happening. So as you can see, you know, the first one on the list is, it's hard to see, but anyway, the top bar is called integration platform. And that actually happens to be an internal service. So an internal service is one that is only available to our IT department within, and it's kind of like an underpinning service. And so we manage internal service just like any other service. So there are services and offerings, and there's offering managers, etc. So you can see the little screenshot, hard to see again, but the integration platform is a internal service. It has 8 offerings within there. There are different offering managers. There is one service owner because it's all under one service. And then it falls under a specific SMT, senior management team area. So that allows us to keep track of them that way. And so I'm going to stop here. You can skip the next slide, Mitch, and just go to the questions for the panelists, and so that we can get on with Q&A for the last 10 minutes we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everyone. I know that we kind of sped through that. Hopefully that was helpful for people. Let's jump into the Q&A. Thank you, panelists, for taking the questions that came in. We had 24 answered questions, so that leaves 3 open questions. I also want to acknowledge those of you who sent questions ahead of time. I put them down here on the slide. I think some of these or most of these have been answered. So let's jump into the Q&A, and we'll get started. So the first one here, and by the way, there's been some ServiceNow specific questions. We tend to be a bit tool agnostic in EDUCAUSE, so I will save those specific ServiceNow questions if the panelists want to reach out to the attendees or the audience members offline. Happy to make that happen. So first one here is Michael Sweeney. For services that most users can't request, is there some sort of rule of thumb that we use as panelists and authors of the catalog to determine customer groups and what's available to them? Does anybody feel comfortable taking that one on?
Well, I just want to jump in and say we do identify at the offering level just what customers they're for. So either as a student, as staff, etc. But that's about it. So if somebody drills down to the offering level, they could see who this offering is intended for. But beyond that, it doesn't get hidden if a student logs in versus a staff. It's not permission-based or doesn't trigger anything else. Hopefully that answers a bit of the question.
Apologize. I have a dog in the background who's barking, so forgive that.
Yeah, and we've considered, at the portal having it recognize who you are, but we're not sure, we're not there yet, and we're not sure if we're going to go in that direction as of yet. But we do try to include at least a description so that users kind of know who the intended audience is.
This next question is from Corey. Do service owners also run the service? Do the service offering managers report to service owners, or are they more individual contributors? I think Chaz wants to take that one.
Oh, I was just marking that if somebody was going to answer it live, but I will happily answer it. No, it's fine.
Not to put you on the spot there. I just saw your name on there.
Yeah, Mojan's chart with the mountain. We have a very similar chart.
I copied your chart.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I love the idea that it's really thinking about the strategic, the tactical, and the operational levels. And those roles are different. We expect different things. We need different skill sets for those. So the person running the service or the offering at the operational level, the day-to-day support fixing something, is not necessarily the same person you need making the strategic decisions about that. Neither one of those people is necessarily going to have the right skills to do the job there. So in an organization of a sufficient size, you may be able to break those apart better. For small organizations, a lot of times you're wearing multiple hats. And I will say that even though my institution is probably medium to large from an IT standpoint, we have 280 in central IT and another 150 or so in distributed. We all wear multiple hats. So, but we do try to set our service owners and our service offering managers as two different roles, even if I'm wearing a hat of the service owner and then taking that off and wearing my service offering manager hat. I hope
Yes, and I just want to add that in our case, most of our service owners are at the management or director level, and the service offerings underneath them are part of their group organizationally, but we have some that are not. And so therefore we have offering service owners who don't have teams. And so they would have to kind of manage across the different org units. And we want to get to a place where service owners are so strategic and they have kind of this checklist or cookie cutter approach that they could be moved around. They could be a service owner for any area without connection to the org, but we're getting there.
And maybe that's a follow-up, because if you see, one of the top issues or top topics reported in the survey was service catalog roles and responsibilities. So definitely a lot of hunger for that. In the 3 or so minutes remaining, I did want to honor these questions on the slide here. Would any of the panelists like to take one of these questions and provide an answer for it? And I'm sorry to everyone that we couldn't get to all the questions, but thank you for submitting them and thank you for your questions.
I mean, I'll quickly answer number 3. We customize ServiceNow to support your catalog structure. We have done that in the past, and we're trying to get away from that because it's difficult to maintain as you go from, one version to another. So it's actually something that we're trying to keep it as uncustomized as we can as we head into the future. And some of our time is spent trying to undo some of those customizations just to make it easier as you do the upgrades.
Okay, thank you, Paul. All right, well, I appreciate everyone for attendance. There's a link to the feedback on this event. Please take a moment to fill that out. Again, thank you to the 4 of you for presenting today. If anyone in the audience has an idea, wants to present something, I always say, if you've got a voice, I've got a platform, come talk to me if you have an idea. Be sure to check out our next event on December 3rd, where we're kicking off the first in a series of ITIL change enablement and DevOps. Look for more announcements and exciting opportunities and events in 2021. As a reminder, this is being recorded, and the transcripts and recording will be available on the IT Service Management website within 5 days. So everyone, thank you for your time and have a great day.